Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 content. We're back with another top list. This time I'm going to be sharing my top 5 missile cav. I've been having some discussions with some other community members about various types of missile cav, and I've decided to share with you guys my top 5 missile cav. Missile cav in general are one of the strongest types of units in the game, hence why they're limited to 5 each in quick battles, which I definitely think is a good limit. I wish that limit would extend to all 360-degree shooting units, including infantry skirmishers, but that's the topic for another day. This is my top list, and so just a quick preface here, this is my own personal opinion and based on my own experiences, not only in campaign but largely in multiplayer as well, and I am going to be, of course, viewing this from a multiplayer paradigm, as is typical for my channel, and many of you will disagree with this, and I strongly encourage you guys to put your own top 5 list down in the comments below, or if you have specific nitpicks with any of these units, be sure to let me know why, and why you would rather put another unit in their place. So, starting with number 5, oh, and one more quick note here, regiments of renown, as evidenced here by these Def Screepas, will be factored in. They're not going to be the defining part, but if a unit has a regiment of renown, and particularly if that regiment of renown is very good, that does certainly factor into the overall ranking of the base unit. So, starting off, number 5 obviously is the Spider Riders, the diminutive, tiny, and very, very cheap Goblin Spider Riders. So, their cheapness is largely what makes them number 5 on this list. They're only 450 points. They also have a number of really nice attributes to come along with that very low price. Of course, being melee attack, poison in melee, and poison missile damage as well for such a cheap unit. They also have the Forest Strider's traits. They don't get slowed down by terrain like other cav would, so they can run through the forest, ambush, and then quickly pull back. And yeah, they don't have the best combat stats, relatively low armor, and they are quite a bit slower than other light cav at 78 speed, whereas most light cavalry is around 90 or so. That being said, though, I mean, obviously with the poison, they can bring other cav down to their speed. And the regiment of renown they have is the Def Screepas. These guys have regeneration and stock. Very, very useful attributes to have, certainly, especially regeneration for a missile cav makes them very good at counter skirmishing and, you know, hit and run, that sort of thing. Of course, the better combat stats are always welcome as well. So, yeah, that's my number 5, the Goblin Spider Rider Archers. So let's move on here. Sorry for the super low production value, but I don't really have any time to do any editing, so we're just going to be going straight through this in a custom battle screen. Next up on the list is going to be, we're switching over to Chaos, so that should give you some idea. And I'm actually going to go with the middle of the road Chaos Marauder horsemen with throwing axes. And this is applicable for Norska too, I guess, because they're largely the same unit, just slightly different in terms of cost. But let's go ahead and take a look at these guys on the battlefield while we talk about their attributes a little bit. So obviously they're a 360-degree shooting armor-piercing unit, which in and of itself is a strong attribute to have. Not to mention, of course, they are missile cavalry, and they're light cavalry with a full 90 speed. They don't have much armor, but it is worth noting that they do have a missile block chance. 30%. You can see they do have these shields here, which makes them decent in a counter skirmishing. They're a little bit more resilient to missile fire than most missile cav, although you certainly don't want them taking sustained fire if at all possible. But it does mean that kind of quick hit and run style motions where you come in, throw some axes, and then quickly pull away. Some of those shots that may come in the meantime will get blocked by those missiles there, at least on the approach, not while you're pulling away, of course. But yeah, no regiment of renown for the Marauder horsemen with throwing axes, but the fact that they have armor piercing, they have pretty decent combat stats too for a missile cav. 22 attack, 26 defense, and a 24 charge bonus, not too bad at all. The 30 missile damage is pretty solid, only 70 range, but they are a very good tool for Chaos to have. Of course, Chaos generally lacks any infantry skirmishers. Their only skirmishers at all are Marauder horsemen, and that's a little bit different from Norska, but they don't have a lot more options. They only have a couple infantry skirmishers anyway. So horse masters are pretty good, and the javelin variant are pretty good as well, but I decided to go with specifically the throwing axe variant because of their armor piercing and their missile block chance. And the fact that they're 600 points, a pretty good middle of the road between those other two that I just mentioned. So, yeah, my number 4, Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes. So let's move on now to the next one here. And this one is a particular favorite of mine. This time we're moving over to the Wood Elves, and perhaps one of the best hybrid melee missile cav units in the game, the Sisters of Thorn. These guys also just have a lot of interesting stuff going on, so let's dive straight into it. They're very good in melee, substantially better than a lot of other missile cav units due to a number of different factors. They do have less models overall, only 36 as opposed to a typical 45 for most missile cav. There are a few that are more, but only 36 for these gals. However, they do a lot of missile damage, 10 armor piercing and 20 base missile damage with a pretty good reload rate, giving a total of 42 over 10 seconds. Of course, they also have poison missiles as well. No poison in melee, but they have great melee stats for a missile cav. 34 attack, 33 defense is just great for a cav unit in general. 28 weapon strength with a 30 charge bonus. They also have 50% physical resistance, which certainly makes up for the fact that they have incredibly low armor. They are 85 speed, which again, below the average 90 or so that most missile cav have, but they do have the poison to bring other light cav down to their level. And beyond that, they also have, of course, their 2 support kind of bound spells. They have 2 casts of Shield of Thorns, which gives additional missile resistance and weapon damage. It's great for self-buffing the Sisters of Thorn if they're like charging down some skirmishers, for example, and they're going to be taking some Overwatch fire coming in. You can pop that Shield of Thorns to augment their physical resistance, and they'll get around 70%, 72% total between the 2 mitigation there. And the weapon damage, always nice against low armor units. Curse of Onrayr is a melee attack and speed debuff. Accuracy, is there, but it's not really super useful, but the speed melee attack certainly is. I've had these gals really effectively kite heavy cavalry even, where they can do substantial amount of damage before the fighting begins, using the poison, using the Curse of Onrayr and Moron, and they do have the combat stats to countercharge things like hounds, other cheap fast attack units. They can deal with them without any issues. So my number 3, very, very powerful unit, the awesome looking Sisters of Thorn. Now let's move on to the next one. And now this is another unit that is pretty good in the hybrid role, but they do have armor-piercing missiles and a trait that makes them arguably the best missile cav in the game. There's one that I prefer a little bit more, of course, because these guys are at number 2, but I'm talking about the Centigors with throwing axes. And what exactly, you ask, makes them so amazing? Well, for starters, like I said, they're decent in melee. Not quite as good as the Sisters of Thorn, but they do have solid combat stats all around, decent charge bonus. Let's go ahead and take a look. Yeah, 22 attack, 20 defense is pretty solid. 32 weapon strength and 30 charge bonus in particular is pretty decent for a missile cav. But the thing that makes them so good is their perfect vigor. This rowdy trait that Centigors have. It means they'll never tire, they'll never slow down, even though they can be running around and throwing their axes all day until they run out of axes. They'll never get tired as long as their leadership stays up. So that's what makes the Centigors with throwing axes, in my mind, stand out above, let's say, the Marauders with throwing axes. Of course, they also have the 360-degree shooting armor-piercing missiles, which, as we talked about earlier, is a very powerful trait in and of itself to have. But the combat stats and the sheer speed, right now it's only 80, but once the battle kicks up and they have that Primal Fury, they'll have even more. And granted, this also gives more melee attack and charge bonus, so keep in mind the stats here are just the base stats without that effect applied. And yeah, between those stats, that's what makes them so good. Again, no Regiment of Renown for these guys, but they're just so effective, and the only missile cav option available to the Beastmen. In particular, I like combining builds with a lot of Centigors, including Centigors with throwing axes, mixed with Centigors with great weapons, and the, I guess, spear and shield Centigors as well. Very, very useful units, and very thematic to the Beastmen. Hit and run, throw some axes, get in melee, get back, throw some axes, you know, rinse and repeat all day. Very, very useful units in a multitude of situations, which brings us to our final unit of Missile Cav. Let's get to it. Drum roll, please. Anyway, moving on, who will it be? Yes, indeed, we're going to the High Elves, and you all know what that means. There's only one Missile Cav available for the High Elves. We'll get to Chariots on another day. Illyrian reavers. Man, what can I say about Illyrian reavers? Let's jump in so I can start yammering on and on about them. Illyrian reavers are relatively expensive, $750. Not the most expensive unit on this list, certainly. That honor belongs to the Sisters of Thorn, who definitely deserve it. They quite readily bear that price tag because of how good they are. But the Illyrian reavers are amazing. They have massive range, first of all. The highest range, I believe, of any missile cav in the game. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on that. Beyond that, the base unit, at least, has pretty good speed, 90 speed. They also have 40 armor, not too bad. Combat stats are decent. They look a little wimpy right now, but that's mostly because, again, martial prowess is not active, so they'd be at, what, 32 melee attack and 34 melee defense, so very good combat stats, 24 charge bonus with a 27 weapon strength, and of course the 140 range is one of the best things about them by far. Let's see here, 20 missile damage, 3 of which is armor piercing, so pretty decent AP values, although certainly not the best, but the fact that they have such extreme range here means that you can do something like this, for example, where I Vanguard deploy and immediately have range on my opponent's front line, so I can immediately start picking and choosing targets that I want to focus fire. Beyond that, did I mention they're good in melee? And that goes double everything I've said here for the Regiment of Renown, which again factors into this decision, not the defining trait of it, but the Heralds of the Wind are one of the best Regiments of Renown in the game by far. They have amazing stats. What they pick up over the regular Illyrian Reaver archers is that they have a better charge bonus, which again, critical for a cavalry unit. They jump up to a full-on 40 charge bonus, which is really good for a missile cav unit. They also have 105 speed and obviously the better combat stats and better reload rate that come with being a rank 9 version of the base unit. So yeah, Illyrian Reavers, just absolute forces of nature, and the Heralds of the Wind are that to the nth degree. They are just absolutely amazing. So let me know what you guys think. What are your top 5 missile cav, and moreover, what situations do you like to use missile cav in? Obviously, depending on the faction you are playing as and the faction you're playing against, I think that missile cav have large roles in almost every matchup. Typically, I would find myself taking at least one in almost every matchup just because of the tactical flexibility they offer. They can run in, shoot high-value targets, run away. They are less vulnerable to infantry skirmishers, although they do require some micro to keep alive, certainly. And I have seen some people complain about skirmish mode. I'll kind of briefly address that here. Most high-level players I know don't actually use skirmish mode because what can happen is if your unit is set to skirmish mode, and let's say you have these Illyrian Reavers who can easily beat a unit of Chaos Warhounds in melee, no problem. But if you set them on skirmish mode, they'll run away anyway, and you may forget about them. Now, granted, if you forgot about them and they get charged by the hounds, that's not going to be great either, but still, you can have a situation where you get zoned out, and I often find that there are ways that you can kind of exploit the AI of the skirmish mode to be able to catch the units. So I don't personally use it. A lot of other high-level players I know also don't use it, but let me know your guys' thoughts about skirmish mode in general. That is kind of an aspect of skirmish cav, definitely. But missile cav in general, I definitely think are a useful part of any army, and while I don't think they should be the focus of any army, they should certainly be a good part of any combined arms strategy, and definitely, especially against factions that are very fast or tend to throw a lot of bodies at you, like say the Beastmen or the Vampires, where it can be very hard to protect infantry skirmishers. Skirmish Cav are always another good option, not to mention the tactical flexibility they offer in tying down mobile units, getting around your opponent's backline, charging in on infantry skirmishers, and more. I definitely love using Missile Cavs, so let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed this top 5 list. I'm going to be bringing more top 5 lists, that is, to you guys. Let me know what type of unit you want me to cover next. Heavy Cav, Elite Infantry, Sword and Board Infantry, Great weapon infantry, artillery. I'm happy to cover any type of unit that you guys want to see. So let me know in the comments down below what you want to see. Also, let me know, if you disagree with any part of this list. Certainly, I want to hear about it. And thank you very much for watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.